I think that we could introduce and also sum up the masterclass number 1 on RRI by saying it's not the technology, it's the vision and it's the governance of technology. There are some prodromes to our discussion today, and that is that this overall concept of responsible research and innovation has some prodromes in the EU legislation, and none less that the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union, which has the precautionary principle embedded, meaning that we can stop technology and we can stop innovation if there are actual fears that what we don't understand might not be good. This was embedded in the treaty in 1999, if I'm not wrong, and the principle itself is very simple, the way it's stated, and so there's additional legislation and cases, and in the material there will be an annex on when and how it has been applied. But for our purpose today, suffice to know that there is this idea that technology and innovation cannot be always good; they can be wrong. So it's up to us to steer that and to put in place an effective and shared governance, so that innovation doesn't go south, basically. The concept of responsible research and innovation is a concept of shared governance of innovation, as we were saying just now. It aims at steering innovation so that concerns on the stakeholders' part, but also benefits are foreseen and shaped in a way that makes sure that innovation has a positive impact on the society, the environment, but also that is more acceptable. So it's more readily taken up by its meant users. It intersects, as a concept, it intersects with many other innovation framework that you may have heard before. So therefore, eco-innovation, social innovation, but also gendered innovation, that is innovation that is designed in a way that takes into account the differences in terms of use, of conditions, even in terms of biology between men and women, for instance. Frugal innovation is another concept that you may have crossed. It's a way of developing or re-engineering innovation, so all the frills are taken out, and the core elements of that technology, the core needs addressed so that innovation is less expensive, and this has been particularly famous in underdeveloped countries, or where constraints in terms of time or finance or even knowledge are an issue. Of course, it's also about the responsibility of innovators and enterprises towards society and in society, how they play their role, and therefore it also connects to corporate social responsibility. In the field of science, it resonates with post-normative science. It's not assuming that science happens outside of society, that science happens in a perfect world where social, cultural constraints are not relevant. It's a powerful concept because it also helps to operate this idea of sustainability, of competitiveness through digital and green transitions without leaving anybody behind, which is the whole concept of Europe and its current vision. It's also particularly useful to operate the mission-oriented approach of the research and innovation European funds, for instance. The definition. There are many definitions of RRI. They're not in contrast one with the other, but for today's purposes, we're just sticking to the definition by René von Schomburg, former policy officer at the research DG of the European Commission. So, responsible research and innovation is a process which is transparent and interactive, whereby the innovators and the stakeholders get together in a mutual dialogue, ongoing and open, to make sure that the marketable results of innovation are acceptable, sustainable, socially desirable, and aligned with the ethical values. It's important to remark that what is taken into account is the marketable results of innovation, because the idea behind is that it's only when it gets into the market that innovation really changes our life, really affects our environment. So behind this definition, there's this idea that all innovation players have an important role, but enterprises specifically, they're the ones that make innovation happen on, in our everyday work, have a huge responsibility, even huger than we were used to think they had when we're just focusing on corporate social responsibility. The why, I think, was very well explained by the previous introduction by Bela. However, I choose to illustrate a further example, which, it's in the realm of autonomous vehicle, but it's up in the air. It's about unmanned air mobility. Because, of course, there's also this idea that if the roads are too crowded, we could use the space above the roads. This is the kind of thinking as if technology was like a straight driveway, that we develop new technology without really changing our way of thinking or our way of living, which is not necessarily the case. So anyway, we have a best case scenario where unmanned air mobility is there, is available, and it's excellent response, for instance, when emergencies happen, because it can get where no man can get, or at least it gets where no man can get in that little amount of time. It can have eyes everywhere. It's efficient, it's faster. It has environmental benefits because it's mostly operated by either hydrogen, they're studying that, or by it's powered by electricity. It improves connectivity, because even if an emergency is not the case, it can reach rural areas, mountainous areas, so all for the best. However, they got eyes everywhere, so that means that privacy is a concern. They could fall down on our heads. They could also cause noise pollution. And they're, not necessarily costly devices, which they are at present, but they are devices which require particular skills to operate. At present, or powerful algorithms, so they might not be for everyone. So, of course, it's not like a best case scenario or worst case scenario. It's always a mix of the two things. But whether we're leaning on the best case or we're leaning on the worst case is a matter of governance. It's a matter of how this innovation unfolds and are led to unfold in our society. So that is why, the point is that is why we need responsible research and innovation. It is a framework, therefore it's a mix of concepts, principles, methodologies and tools which tap into different areas. Of course, we will in responsible research and innovation we make great use of the knowledge of stakeholder engagement, for instance, design thinking. We'll touch upon this a little later on the presentation. So it's not that everything is brand new. Responsible research and innovation brings together knowledge and methodologies from different fields, and it's particularly interesting for public authorities because it makes innovation deliver on sustainability and social accountability and desirability as well. So it kind of multiplies the effect of every euro that is earmarked to support innovation if that innovation is developed within a framework of responsible research and innovation. Just to try and understand, to move on from the concepts and the principles to something that is a more hands-on nature. There's some consensus, wide consensus in literature to use these 4 dimensions as the operational dimensions of RRI, as the operational dimensions that allow us to turn the principle into some more practical line of work. So first of all, there's anticipation, meaning that many efforts are required to try and envision what is the future of technology or the innovation that we're designing. What will happen once it's out there in the market? What kind of impact will it cause? Positive, negative? To do this exercise, since innovation is to many extent the realm of the unknown, technical knowledge and risk assessment will not help you to do the whole assessment and envisioning and scenario building exercise. You will need to get together with stakeholders that will be able to provide feedback and information on how they think they will be affected, on what the fears and concerns are when you start talking of, point in case, autonomous vehicle or unmanned air mobility. So there's information that your technical background would not have provided you with, so you have to engage with the stakeholder to understand, to get that kind of knowledge, to really try and figure out what will happen to your technology once it's out there. Of course, when you engage with stakeholders, many of them outside the world of research and technology, many from different backgrounds, you will have to reflect on the process itself, reflect on your values, reflect on your business as usual. So it's about being open, not just like in the dialogue that you're having, but really open-minded. You need to be able to question your way of doing things and to remain open to question that. Being open to question that because you need to be responsive to what happens once your technology is out there. Unforeseen events and impact, further concerns or reactions that the stakeholders were not able to bring to the table during the designing process. You have to have a system to make sure that you keep this dialogue open with the stakeholder and you react properly to whatever happens in the future. So, again, anticipation by inclusion, ensuring reflexivity and responsiveness are the operational dimension of RRI. Of course, it doesn't already say how to make sure that all these 4 dimensions are in place. There's methodologies, there's knowledge, there's additional thinking to break that further down. But for the moment, we'll just stop here. It's an introduction, it's RRI 101. There's people that have been studying this stuff for years and years, so I don't think we can be so ambitious as to say that we will cover everything today. As you might remember, at the core of this definition of RRI, there's the alignment to ethical values, which is a big label to put the thing. So how do we fill this heading, ethical values, out today in Europe? We're keeping a EU-based perspective in this presentation and also in our work in the future 3 years. In Horizon 2020, RRI made its way through the agenda of the people who wrote the framework program for research and innovation, to the point that there were specific funding to work on the concept and to apply the concept. So a lot of work has been done with the Horizon 2020 Europe funding, and it has been done starting from the so-called Europe Commission RRI keys that were a way to, again, break down this concept so that there were some elements, some pillars that everybody was taking into account. Maybe looking at them now and seeing what has happened in the years, they're not fully satisfactory, but I think it's still good to have a look at them. So what Europe was telling to those that were engaging in responsible research and innovation a few years ago is that you had to make sure that you engage with your stakeholders. And why you have to do that, we just said a few minutes ago. Because there's knowledge out there that as a researcher and as an innovator, you just don't have yet. It's about open access, meaning that it's not just an open dialogue, but the results of the dialogue should be made accessible to as many people as possible. Of course, when you're talking about research, when you're talking about innovation, there's IPR issues, of course, but again, there's an element of the process and of the reasoning that should be left open. There's deliverables, as in the case of public funding, that need to stay open. And the openness is, of course, good in itself, but it's also necessary for the process of engaging with stakeholders, because if you just engage by stakeholders by convening them around the table, they would not be able to interact with you unless they have information, unless some knowledge has been transferred. So openness and transparency in information about technology and research is key to this concept of responsible research and innovation. Gender equality, of course, but more generally, making sure that everybody has the same, as a voice and has the same opportunity to feed into the research and innovation process, so that whatever innovation is brought to the market is usable by everyone. Science education, it is key because, as we have seen during the pandemic, there's the need for people to understand what science means to development, what it means to our, to our health, to our everyday life. Science needs to be open, communicated, understood, and we need scientists and we need innovators. So it's a two-way process, keeping science open. Ethics, again, is the idea of aligning with the European vision of fairness and of sustainability. It's aligning with the RRI keys themselves, so there's a bit of, we're circling back to the same concept over and over again, even when we're trying to explain them. So there's a bit of tautology there. Governance. Governance is a key that appears and disappears, but in my opinion is quite important because it's what brings everything together. It's what makes sure that this is not just a one-off exercise, but it's the way we do things. It's in Horizon Europe, the concept of RRI is still there. There's not funding to bring on the research, and it is referred to as a mix of the RRI keys and the operational dimensions. So it remains relevant even though the jargon has changed a little bit. Okay, the reference value. Again, this label of ethics that keeps appearing. We've seen the keys that provide a bit of guidance, but looking at it from a more global perspective, it's particularly useful to stick to Agenda 2030 and to the SDGs, because they really sketch a vision of the global society that we would like to be part of and build together in the future. So the SDGs are a good way to start to understand what kind of final meta objectives your innovation should contribute to. At the same time, there has been a slight switch in the way that Europe sees the direction that innovation should take. It used to be the grand societal challenges in Horizon 2020. Now we're moved towards this idea of mission-oriented innovation. That is, making a collective effort so that innovation development is steered toward, is aimed at, takes into account some goals that are considered as really being able to dramatically improve the quality of life of us Europeans, and that's fighting cancer, climate neutral and smart cities, healthy ocean, seas, coastal and inland water, soil, health and food, climate resilience. Of course, it's not often so immediate to understand how what we're doing affects the SDGs or this European innovation missions, but this is why RRI is always a collective effort. So we have more minds around the table, and we become more able to capture the impact, the overall impact and the long-term impact of our innovation. And it's often the case that we understand that whatever we're doing also impact on these missions as well, and the SDGs, of course. So once we set some basic knowledge around RRI, the point is, how do we do RRI in our daily work as innovators or as stakeholders that might be involved in an innovation process. It's a journey, not an event. It's not something that you do one-off. Although what happens is that it does cost time and resources, so it's often the case it's done thanks to EU funding, and then once they're over, you kind of fall back on the previous way of doing things, but it's by perseverance that you eventually change things. As in corporate social responsibility, as in eco-innovation, social innovation, the point is always you don't swallow an elephant, you eat it piece by piece. So you have to understand what is the piece of the elephant that you can actually chew, eat, and digest. So it's important for you to understand where is your leverage and what matters to your stakeholders. So even in RRI, it's good to use this concept of materiality, which is something that is well known in the world of management standards for innovation. And once you've understood where you can make a dent, it's also easier to understand what kind of resources you need. Not like super easy, but at least you have designed your boundaries and your limits for actions in a clear way. So even the reverse engineering the process, it should be easier for you and to understand what resources are needed as well. Yeah, well, my e-link there is a bit cut, but as I said, we start from the concept of understanding where we could have an impact. What really are our leverages, our interests, where we have the power to invest our money, and therefore what we should focus on. And how do we do that? Maybe with a little metrics that tries to combine what is important to us, what matters to us, what we can operate, and what matters to our stakeholders. So really, it's important to invest on where you can make a change. It's like seeing a sustainability report by a company that uses very little electricity, and then they boast about their energy savings, whatever. So it's important to understand where you can make a difference, because it matters to you, because you can do it, and because it matters to your stakeholders. Otherwise, it's just a nice exercise, but it's not really making any impact out there in the society or the environment. It's a process, as we said, so you have to keep it spinning. You have to keep it spinning. You have to keep assessing, reporting, understanding, reviewing what you're doing, so that it keeps being material, okay? Reflexivity and responsiveness are not 2 out of the 4 operational dimensions, but by chance. It's because it's about, as I said, keeping the circle spinning and always reassessing. We're talking about innovation, so we don't have all the information out there. Society changes also because of the innovation that we put out there. So the dialogue needs to keep alive. Of course, data is important. The more scientific, technical part of this process, the analysis, the data collection are important. You need to set KPIs. Then we'll talk about how you measure ROI. There's a lot of storytelling besides the data analysis, but it's important that you set your own measures, because otherwise, how do you make sure that you're going the right way? How do you report to your stakeholders? So this element of, after deciding what methods to use, to also categorize it, pigeonhole a little bit, is very important for you to be able to then reassess. And then you have to do things, of course, so that something happens, and so that you're able to reflect and respond to concerns that have been highlighted by the reporting stage. Of course, it's a lot of words, it's a lot of bullet points. It's not for you to really absorb them now. There will be in the slides. What is important is that you understand that it's a process, that it's a circle, it's a helix. You need to always be in touch with what is happening. You have to always be responsive to your stakeholders and open to changes, because things may happen that you don't want, things may happen that are good and you haven't foreseen, but they also need to reassess the process. Okay, some practical tools. As I was saying at the beginning, RRI benefits from knowledge and methodologies that have been developed in other domains. For instance, this overall issue of stakeholder engagement is being developed in a number of different domains: democracy, design thinking, also policy making, so on and so forth. It's a science in itself, and RRI hinges on that. So what I've done here is just put a number of methodologies, or maybe methodological domains on paper for you to understand that you might already have come across elements of RRI. And you don't necessarily have to do it right, the first time, or to do it wholly at the first time. But you can start from what you know already about this process. You can approach RRI from maybe your citizen science exercises. You can approach it from the fact that you may have set up a participatory process to, I don't know, maybe design your city budget, okay? So these are all practical tools that help you operate RRI through the operational dimensions that we were talking before. If you don't know where to start, a good starting place is still, I'm saying still because it's a project that has been funded a few years ago, but it's still up and running, is the RRI Tools repository. There you can browse the available knowledge on RRI, starting from different viewpoints. I'm a citizen, I'm an innovator, I'm a researcher, I'm an enterprise, and then look for tips and hints and methodologies on different aspects of RRI, the gender element, the participation, the citizen science. So it's a good place to to start and understand what in practical RRI may be, what examples are out there, what methodologies. For instance, the methodologies that we used for the exercise in the first part of this morning, which falls into the category of design thinking methodologies, is extremely useful for an RRI exercise as well. So, as I said, I'm sure that every one of you has already elements of the knowledge that we can pull together to make sure that throughout this process we will be working within a responsible research and innovation framework. Who gets to decide? Because up to now we said everything together, we're engaging stakeholders and we're doing things together, we co-create and this and that. Of course, that remains like fundamental. But there's a go, no-go decision, down the line. And somebody has to take that decision. It's normally the policymaker when we're designing policies. It's normally the innovators, as in the the enterprises, when we're talking about innovation that eventually needs to enter the market, it's the researchers, even before that, deciding whether to develop that line of research or not. Well, firstly, it's what happens, because somebody puts the money, somebody puts a budget, somebody invests in that, so this happens. It's not necessarily bad that there comes a point in time where somebody takes a decision if they still do it within an RRI framework. That means being responsive to further stakeholders' concern, being responsive to possible negative impact that might happen. So even if at a certain point in time there's somebody that decides, even though consensus has not been fully reached, this is not necessarily a failure of RRI. We should not say, forget about this RRI thing, because if then an enterprise decides as they did in the past, what's the point of RRI? No, we don't throw the whole concept away because then somebody decide might not be us. Okay. Of course, there's always the precautionary principle down there, overseeing that things don't go south in Europe, which sometimes they do, but still, it's good to know that we have this common net. How do we measure RRI? It's a live, living matter, and there's no final word as to you would measure RRI. Same that happened with CSR. I don't know. I think I've been dealing with this issue of how do you measure RRI since I started working on RRI. That was the end of the 90s. So there's no final measure for this kind of things. But there are different approaches, and one of them is the super vast set of indicators that the Morri project has been working on, Morri and then Super Morri, providing a very complete and thorough list of indicators that could describe RRI, and you as a public authority or as a researcher or as an innovator could assess yourself against. Many of them are about the impact of the kind of work that you do, so it doesn't really give you an immediate measure maybe of your work, but it's more about how the society moves forward also because of your effort. Then we have the transform approach, which kind of inherits the work of a group that was set up some years ago, again by the Commission, to try and understand how do we measure RRI. Is evaluative inquiry. It's more kind of a storytelling of where you want to get, and a storytelling of how you're getting there. It's rather than focusing on the outcomes and how societies transform because of our efforts, which is the snapshot type of approach that Morri has. And of course, I'm oversimplifying things here, so I should apologize to the Morri people, of course. But as we said, RRI 101, you try and simplify. Then as we get keen, we might have a final MasterClass on RRI and be super precise and invite everyone over. But again, going back to what I call the transform approach, because this has been further developed during this SWAP 14 Horizon 2020 project that closed a few months ago. What this approach measures is more maintenance work of RRI. It's about understanding the relationship and the plethora of actions that contribute to to the governance of innovation, and to see if they work, how they work, and if they still work. So this is why I was talking about storytelling, which maybe sounds less robust than it actually is. And then I'm proud to mention the OECD and Interreg Europe Marie approach, because while developing this Marie project and in the past years, it was about mainstreaming RI in regional policy. So the matter of measuring was pretty pressing, I would say. So we worked with OECD, and we came up with a methodology to assess RRI, as in the driving force from regional smart specialization strategy to S4+. That is the same thing, but with a deeper engagement of stakeholders. And it's like a first storytelling, evaluative inquiring approach, which may then avail itself of defining sets of indicators that are co-created, not as in the indicators, but as in the sets of indicators. Of course, these three ways of measuring RRI are from the perspective of those that are governing innovation. It's mostly from a public authority point of view, because this is what we are. This is the kind of environment that we have in Interreg projects that are about building capacity of public authorities to do whatever they think they should prioritize. If you were an enterprise, you probably need an adaptation of these methodologies to something that is more stringent. And so tools like the RRI roadmaps that I was mentioning in the previous slide about the tools might be a bit more useful and effective to your line of work if you are an enterprise. RRI challenges to RRI. It's not Anki-Dory. We haven't learned all the ropes yet. I would say the main challenge, in my opinion, besides the metrics, besides the willing to be open, it's really the stakeholder engagement. It costs time and resources, and it's very difficult to keep it up and running for public authorities, and even more so for enterprises or research institutions. It's so valuable, and at the same time, it's so complicated. It needs, robust methodologies. It needs to have people that know what they're doing when they're facilitating this process. It needs huge effort beforehand, because you need to map your stakeholders, and then you need to make them able to participate to the discussion, which means translate your knowledge into knowledge that is understandable and usable by the stakeholders. And then it's about setting, safe spaces. It needs to, even just telling it, I can feel, how heavy it is, and the burden, and the knowledge and the resources, the financial resources that are needed. So, cracking this element of stakeholders' engagement is an actual challenge for everyone, and I'm glad that we will hear from our friends from ALDA on how we should do it, and maybe they have nice hints on also how to make it viable in the long term. Now, collaborating among researchers and innovators from different fields is all the rage on paper, but I'm sure that you all know how difficult it is to talk to people that are a different jargon, let alone a different mindset. which is what happens when enterprises and researchers try to have a dialogue. This is what happens when scientists from humanities try and talk to engineers. So it's not easy to talk to each other when you don't share the same language and mindset. Okay, so it's going to cost resources and time, but as for stakeholders engagement, it's where we're headed. At least now, this is what is being prioritized. Enough with the challenges, because otherwise we were like, oh no, we have to do all right. So let's try to have a quick look at some examples. Again, these are taken from experiences of public authorities mainstreaming ROI in their policies. The first example is from Transform. I already mentioned when we were talking about measures, and basically it was about embedding ROI as a framework and a methodology in running smart specialization strategies. So they did do a lot of work, which in Lombardy region concentrated on a workshop and a process and a workshop to co-create the Lombardy Research and Innovation Agenda. And also, they went a bit more. They were a bit more specific in a side exercise that was about a citizen jury on smart, on responsible smart mobility. So, RRI is not just something that innovators can do or researchers, but it's, as we were saying before, is a powerful tool in the hand of public authorities as well. And you probably did something similar, and you call that, I don't know, co-creation of agendas, stakeholders engagement. But really, since it reflects on the choices that you make for research and innovation, the choices that you make for innovating your services in the cities, it is fully responsible research and innovation. And well, this is just the more details on the steps of the citizens jury, but I wanted to spend just a couple of seconds on the fact that the impact that it delivers, it's wider than the scope of the exercise itself. It really feeds into the relationship between citizens and innovators and policymakers. It changes the pattern of that relationship. And it also creates trust, which then is the raw material, is the main raw material of RRI. So a good RRI exercise produces further trust, which enables further RRI exercises. And this is what they, again, this is just a more detail, I'll skip that. And so what they did for Transform really created further outcome in terms of interest, availability to be part of the dialogue, not just from the closer stakeholders, but also from other regions. So RRI seems to be like the good kind of virus that spreads and brings good things. And this is important to us because our project, although focusing on AV, looks at AV as an exercise to really set up a model, a methodology, a way of doing innovation in a way that it enters our cities by a process of mutual dialogue with the citizens, so that the innovation changes our cities for the best. Another example, this one is from Mosaic, Again, we're still in the realm of ROI applied by policymakers to govern innovation. This is already connected to the mission-oriented approach that is in place now. Again, the example is from Lombardy, and the reason is there's this Fondazione Giannino Bassetti, whom I should thank for this exercise. That is one of the main players at European and national level in the discussion around RRI. And they've been involved in several projects, one being Transform, the other being Mosaic, and many other. So they contributed these two examples. So what they're doing, actually, because it's an ongoing process in Transform, is to use this idea of innovation challenges to trigger and make space for debate on innovation, citywide debate. So around these two challenges, informal groups of people were met, and what was the result of the work of these two groups was then delivered to the city that is apparently super happy about it, and Gothenburg is redoing this exercise because it was so successful. Informal groups of people means many things, like it's not an association, it's not a formal group pre-established or formally established, but it also means that you have to have some rules when you engage with your stakeholders in terms of whether it actually represents your society, but at the same time you should also cut yourself some slacks, because engagement is always good. Of course, you will weight the results based on how many people you were able to engage, but engagement is always good, because as I was saying before, it builds trust. So it's good to start somewhere. Maybe you set out to engage 50 people and you end up with 10, but these 10 people will know, once they get out of your room, at the end of your process, they will know how important it is to participate, and now it is possible. And so they will be your champions out there in the society, and next time maybe you have 30 people or 50 people more representative of your society. So the good thing about RRI is that if you try, you cannot be too wrong. Maybe you don't cover the full picture, but it's good. It's good. Even starting, it's good in itself. And yes, this is just an annex that provides a few examples of how the precautionary principle was applied before, but we're not spending time on this. What we're spending time on, because we do have time, yes, we'll just do it quickly, yeah. Very quickly, much quicker than we thought, we would like you to work a little bit and think about three things, focusing back on our project. So what open issues that don't have a solution yet, could be solved in our cities by AV? The second, what issues have already been tackled by one solution, but could be improved by AV? And the third is your darkest thoughts about AV. It appears that one of the issues that it could improve is mobility for everyone, elderly people, people with mobility issues. Also, it could contribute to sustainability, not just because it's run with electricity, but also because it could provide a new mobility paradigm, much more much smarter. Sorry, I was looking for this word. HR, we're lacking bus drivers, it appears, or we're lacking good bus drivers and drivers that show up at work. So it could also solve that problem. A lot of posted on this concept of mobility everywhere and all the time. So more pervasive public means of transport. And also, this I found it quite interesting. There's a list of other possible uses of AV, not just for bringing people around, for moving people, but for collecting waste, transporting goods, inspecting roads, getting snow out of the streets, cleaning the streets, and no, sorry, this was small scale logistics. Yes, I put it here because it was about goods and not people, but again, it's about pervasiveness. So, open issues that we feel are not solved yet by current services. There are a couple of posted on this scarcity of resources, meaning both in terms of not enough drivers, but also in terms of not enough knowledgeable people to integrate the system in a better way. So maybe this AV being operated by AI could help there. Safe travels. The idea is that it could be safer for like single persons, women, kids to travel, maybe nighttime or secluded places. So it might be safer to go somewhere at all times. Also because the idea is that this vehicle would drop you in front of our house, not at the old bus stop, so you wouldn't have to drive. So safety of the people transported. Again, apparently for some areas, the issue of public transport is totally unresolved. So it went from here to there. Parts of the town that have no public transportation, or rural areas, they could have it with AV. Traffic, big issue. There's traffic with AV could be solved. Then we have three that I couldn't cluster with other. This is very interesting. Responsibility, accountability. The idea is, hit and run are possible today. Hit and run by an AV is not possible because somebody will read the data somewhere. So ideally, and then we'll go to the dark side of the moon, if managed in a transparent way, there would be no hit and runs anymore. Accessibility is I didn't really understand whether it was in terms of using the vehicles, but I guess so. And be attractive for citizens through innovation. I thought that maybe this meant that the AV case is a good vector for innovation, to bring innovation closer to the citizen. If I'm wrong, I'm happy to be corrected. Then the darkest thoughts and the fear. A bunch of them. What if I'm run over by an AV or something that go along that line? If I'm run over, who's responsible? Who's accountable? If there's a malfunction, who's responsible? Who's accountable? Which feeds very nicely. This is all about accidents, but there's another bunch of post-its that the sticky notes that are about the system being hacked. So malfunctions on purpose, generated for evil reason. I do make sure that there are no cyber attacks, that these cars don't go crazy and kill everyone on the streets. This bunch here is nice because it's about losing the human touch. I like driving. I would like to be able to keep driving on the streets and not being banned because I'm a human being and not an artificial intelligence. And I'm actually driving my car as the car is not driving itself. Also, who am I trying to beat at the traffic light if the others are electric vehicles, right?
The autonomous vehicles.
This cluster is about more car being on the street. It's basically, these are about the second scenario. You know, everyone has an AV and they use it all the time because because it's nice. You just can do your stuff and you go around. So you go around more and you have more vehicles. And this is fun. What if people leave their AVs on the streets like they do now with scooters? Increase congestions and then, as always, social issues are always like the last one. The sons of lesser gods. So I put them down here. But this is about the fears that this kind of mobility will not be affordable by everyone. Even if it's a traffic mean, it could come at a premium price. Because for one reason it might be more expensive. It might not, but since it's fancy, it could be, premium priced even though it costs less. So it wouldn't be accessible for everyone, although it would be available. So too expensive for everyone to afford it, some citizens cut out, and maybe those that we think here that we would serve more,